My sister's at the White House. Oh, nice. We're down yesterday. So excited.
That is exciting. I've never been there. I've been there.
Soundboard, you are live.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the December 13th work session of the East Hampton Town Board. Carol, would you please read the roll call?
Councilmember Burke Gonzalez.
Present.
Councilmember Weiss.
Present.
Councilmember
Here.
Councilmember Rogers.
Present.
Supervisor Van.
Present. Please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This morning's meeting will begin with a public portion where any member of the public may address the board on any topic. We ask that you please keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. And we'll discuss the following topics. We have bids from our purchasing director, Jeannie Carosa. We'll have an update on the Louse Point Restoration Project. Melissa Winslow from Natural Resources Department. East Hampton Airport Draft Secra Scope with Dan Rudzow, our outside counsel, and the Montauk Wastewater System update. And that'll be followed by liaison reports, and we do have a few resolutions to approve this morning as well. So without any further ado, Carol, do you have a sign-up sheet for? No one signed up. Anyone in the room wish to address the board on any topic? Yes. You just come to the podium and state your name for the record. And you're welcome to scoot the podium for a little bit.
Yes, I'm not looking into
And
it.
move to
So I can actually see
partially
all of you.
obstructed.
Yeah, there you go. Not completely
Excellent.
but that's
Thank you.
good. Thank you.
Good morning, John Corain, Sag Harbor, representing Noyak Civic Council. I'm just here on behalf of my neighbors and the more than 1,500 resident taxpayers of Noyak to thank the board for your continued efforts to try to get control of your airport. I guess it's amazing watching the litigation take place, but I think history will show you're on the right side of this battle. And as I've sent you in some notes, I hope you keep your courage and conviction in the face of unprecedented allegations against you and disgraceful things that I've seen in the media. But I think the overwhelming majority of people are on your side. And again, I just want to say thank you.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, thank you, John.
Anyone else wish to address the board?
Good rain.
Hi, good morning, John Cullen over in Riverhead. And I would also compliment what previous John just said, and thank you for your time. Throughout the years, early 4 or 5 years ago, maybe even 6 years ago, so I would write the board every once in a while, and I would end it by saying, what will happen in the bottom of the ninth with 2 outs and men on third with the airport? And we've seen what's gone. We're now in about the 15th inning. And it's sad. It should have been over. Everything looked very good. Within about a year before the airport final FAA money going in, all of a sudden the East Hampton Community Alliance came out. And all they did was just pass I'll just say it, malarkey. And I don't know where the East Hampton Community Alliance is now. They've gone quiet. They did have commercials on TV that I was in standing right at this podium. And I did appreciate my picture being out plastered on TV, and I did get compliments. I also know that they went to the Sag Harbor coffee shop, and the gentleman spoke in favor of the airport, but he has since taken those comments back and wish he never made those comments. And I just want to say, I appreciate everything the town board is doing to try and get control of their airport. I know eventually it will happen. When, we just don't know. And I'd also like to say, Happy New Year, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and let there be peace on earth. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Matt, do we have any callers on the line?
Yeah, we have one caller. Give me 1 second.
You just ask if they want to speak in general public comment.
Caller 1402.
Hi, yes. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Supervisor Laura Tuman from Concerned Citizen of Montauk. I'm sorry I'm calling in today. I'm home with my little petri dish of pink eye. So I apologize I couldn't be there with you and the other town board members today. Just for the record, my name is Laura Tuman. I'm president of Concerned Citizens of Montauk. And I just wanted to make a brief comment about one of the presentations that you're going to be seeing later today on the Montauk Wastewater Project. Thank you so much for putting the time into getting the presentation together and up on the website for the public to actually review in advance of today's meeting. By advancing this project, you have essentially recognized the need to address the wastewater crisis, not just in East Hampton Town, but Montauk specifically, which has a very different geology than the rest of East Hampton. The wastewater crisis in Montauk is greatly affecting our ground and surface water, and the plants and animals which live and thrive in them. So essentially you're affecting the shellfishing, the humans who recreate in the water, and so forth. And what we've come to learn is that a combination of septic upgrades and a centralized treatment system or facility is likely necessary to address the different areas of Montauk. So a project like this, meaning like a bigger, larger wastewater treatment facility, can take years or even decades to kind of get up off the ground, running, planned, and implemented. So we know nothing is going to happen overnight. We recognize that there's still a great deal of planning that needs to occur and a great deal of details and specifications and specifics that still need to be determined. And we CCOM, and I myself, would encourage the town to try to be an open and transparent throughout the process as we continue to kind of move this project and concept forward. So essentially, I just wanted to issue publicly come out and just say, you know, we support moving forward with the process. We as an organization have not officially taken a stance on it, but we appreciate the presentation today to get more information out there and to help answer a lot of the questions that our organization, I'm sure other people in the public have as well. So just wanted to thank you for taking the time out of your work session today to advance this topic.
Thank you for taking the time to call in today, Laura. Matt, do we have any other callers on the line?
Yeah, I'm gonna unmute caller 0071. Caller 0071, you are unmuted.
Yeah, hi, this is Tom Ogden of Wainscott. I just wanted to call in briefly and echo the statements that were made earlier about to thank the board for holding the course on its efforts to bring the airport under control. The recent advertising campaign by aviation front groups is beyond belief. It's really upsetting that local papers would even publish some of these complete falsehoods. So once again, thank you.
Thank you, Tom, for calling in. Matt, do we have any other callers?
No, that's the only callers, Mr. Supervisor.
Anyone else here in the meeting hall? Yes, ma'am. And then I'll get to you, Jane. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm
You just
Sharon
pulled-
Senefeld.
If you just pull that out, great. Thanks.
I know I'm short. I'm Sharon Senefelder. I live in Hither Hills in Montauk. Our concern is all my neighbors, we've been talking since David gave us the lowdown. We're concerned about our wells. Most of us are not hooked up to Suffolk County. Also, Suffolk County pumps water right where you want to put the septic system, or close enough to it. That raises our concerns. And I just wanted to bring that to your attention. Don't forget the 600 plus wells in Hither Hills and Hither Woods. I have a pristine well. I like to keep it that way. And I've had a problem getting my septic system approved by Suffolk County Water, but you're jamming this down. And this is our opinion. You're jamming this down into our neighborhood. And we want to be considered. Thank you.
Thank you for coming today, Sharon. And I think if you are able to stay for the presentation, or if you look it up on the town's website, some of your concerns will be answered. And, certainly we don't solve a problem with protecting water in one area by just simply contaminating it in another. So I understand your concerns, but I think they'll be addressed moving forward. Anyone else wish to address the board at this time? Yes, Jane.
Good morning, Town Board. I'm Jane Meering from Amagansett. Actually, well, you know, this saying, when they go low, we go high. I'm going to go low today because I'm going to talk about basements. So I wanted to pick up a little bit on the.
And is going low.
I'm going low, but for the holidays. So needless to say, you had a remarkable discussion about ADUs at the meeting, you know, beautifully led and in detail by Jeremy. And in that discussion you had, that the topic of GFA came up specifically because you were talking obviously about affordable dwellings in the basement. And then the board sort of said, you know, maybe we should talk about the GFA definition overall. So I just wanted to come today and lend my support to this board having the conversation about GFA. I actually emailed you all a document that just, you know, gave examples, and really only a few examples of the hundreds of how below grade space is being developed these days, how much is, you know, down there, how much living space, all of that. You know, we have a 20,000 square foot maximum house limit in our town code. And I think a lot of people think, oh, well, you know, you can't get to 20,000 square feet unless you're on, you know, 4.5, you know, 5 acres close to it. But actually, if you hypothetically say you have a 3-level house and the basement is as big as the footprint of above, you can get to a 20,000 square foot house in this town on something like 2.5 acres. And, you know, a lot of that space, it's gone are the days that it's a dank, dark place where your washing machine is and, you know, some toys. As you know, bedrooms, bathrooms, you know, 10-foot ceilings, but it's like free space from the developer's point of view because it doesn't count in GFA. I'm not even sure it's being assessed fully for the purpose of property taxes, but there is a cost to that below grade space. There's a sort of an environmental impact, you know, digging holes that deep, displacing a lot of soil, groundwater. Concrete is one of the most carbon bombs, you know, out there in terms of carbon footprint. And it just adds a lot of density and intensity of use on properties. So I did just want to come back and ask the board to take that up, you know, as soon as possible. And it would be nice to sort of have that thought about, you know, leading into some of these other changes with you know, ADUs and things like that. So I just want to stress that. So I just want to say also Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. I really appreciate always being able to be in front of this board. I've been here a lot, worn out the carpet this year, but wishing everyone a happy holiday and thank you all.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Jane.
Same to you, Jane.
Too. Anyone else wish to address the board at this time? Matt, do we have any other callers on the line?
No, Mr. Supervisor, there's no new callers.
Okay, we'll move forward with our agenda topics. And first up is bids with Jeannie Carozza. Good morning, Jeannie.
Good morning. A few bids, a few notices, all kinds of good stuff. Anyway, the first thing I have is the acceptance of the bid at Lions Field for the new IA sanitary system, and the apparent low bidder for that is Keith Grimes in the amount of $141,252. Next is the purchase and delivery of ATVs. This would be for 2 ATVs, and the apparent low bidder is Maximum Motorsports, and the total for that would be $42,538. We also did a request for proposal for audit services for the Community Preservation Fund. Cullen and Danowski, who we've used in the past, is the apparent winner for that. And the total for the 2022 tax season would be $11,000. We're also going to be extending the contract of the transportation and disposal of non-recyclable solid waste, used tires, construction and demolition debris. Winter Brothers Hauling of Long Island is the vendor for that one. And a couple of notices. We have the Maidstone Park IA sanitary improvement, and then also the Montauk Gateway Underground Utility Improvement Project. And that's it.
Great. Any questions for Jeannie?
No.
Thank you very much, Jeannie.
You're welcome.
Next up is a Louse Point restoration update. We have Melissa Winslow from Natural Resources Department to give us the update on this project. This is, I think, a really welcomed restoration project. I've heard a lot of public feedback already about what was accomplished here, and give Melissa just a moment to set up the PowerPoint.
Good morning, Town Board. I'm Melissa Winslow, Senior Environmental Analyst in the town's Natural Resources Department. So I'm here to present today and give an overview of a project that was recently completed through the CPF Clean Water East Hampton program. This was a recommendation from the Accabonac Harbor Subwatershed Management Plan and also included in the town's Water Quality Improvement Plan. This really was brought to our attention from residents over concerns over the surface material in the parking lot, which initiated a full review from the Water Quality Technical Advisory Committee. The issue here was really stormwater runoff causing erosion of the dune near the inlet. Excess pavement was overhanging the dune and slowly breaking off onto the beach. We have erosion of walking paths, and we saw some ponding on the surface of the parking area. A temporary fix was installed in 2020, which was asphalt millings. So our proposal was to remove the excess pavement, stabilize the dune, revegetate with native plants without blocking the views of Accabonac Harbor, regrade and replace the surface material with washed quartz gravel, and to create a berm to reduce runoff over the dune and direct water to the north end of the lot. Our overall goal was to maintain the character of the area while reducing stormwater runoff and erosion. So these are some before pictures of Louse Point on the north end. You can see the parking area with ruts and uneven surface and ponding of the water after rain events. This photo was from 2013. We also have a proposed stabilization re-veg photo from the Subwatershed Management Plan and the temporary solution that was installed in 2021, asphalt millings on the parking area. A couple more before pictures. So we can see some of the trail erosion and undercutting of the pavement from runoff going directly onto those walking paths. We also have some uneven surface and shifting of the blockade fencing, as well as some just clear signs of stormwater runoff in the area. So we worked with LK McLean, our town engineer, to prepare the final engineering design for the project and bid documents to complete it. You can see the site plan on the right. So the improvements for stormwater management included replacing the surface material, regrading the lot, installing the berm, removing excess pavement overhanging the dune, and stabilizing the dune area with native shrubs and grasses, and then stabilizing and improving the slope of the walking paths. So this project was completed as of November 17th. The construction was finished within a 3-week timeline. So we have some before and after aerials that were taken by the Natural Resources Department via drone. So you can see October 2020 on the left, the asphalt milling surface with some ponding. You can see that, the end of the dune is getting eroded. The fence is actually kind of hanging off in the lower left. And then on the right, you can see the after photo, which was taken this November. We have a level graded permeable lot, stable dune with a gentle slope, a new sturdy fence that has a gate for emergency access, and native plantings. So these are just some final site photos, the permeable parking area close up, the restored dune. You can see American beach grass, bayberry, and baccharis, and the native plantings. I just have a couple more aerials just to show the final product. So this is really the culmination of a couple of years of effort, and we're really happy with the results. I have one more.
Looks terrific. Questions for Melissa?
No, I just want to thank Melissa and the whole team. I was the liaison to Springs when the asphalt millings went down and folks were quite upset. And we met during COVID on site, David, myself, Matt, and the team from Natural Resources. And it's just remarkable how just quickly and how beautiful now the restoration is. Thank you.
And I would just add, as the liaison to Springs now, how appreciative people are of the work that you've done and how many compliments have been sent my way. And I want to relay them to you. Besides the millings, this area, which is heavily used by the residents in Springs, it's a great dog walking place and a place to put in with the boards and things. And it was in very bad shape. So it's great to see this upgrade happen right now.
You can see even on a cold day in November when we went to go take this aerial, there was still a car on the lot.
Yeah.
Woman with a dog,
It's
so.
a tremendously,
It's every
tremendously
morning.
popular location. And so these improvements are very welcome, and it obviously has environmental benefits as well.
Yes.
But I also want to just say that I appreciate the kiosk with the description of the project that was placed before the work began, because I think it was really helpful for residents to understand, oh, this is what's taking place. This is what we should expect. Because we know that anytime there's any kind of activity in the very slightest without enough information, that those voids get filled with misinformation pretty quickly. So there weren't any rumors about us, building something some monstrosity or paving or whatever. This was a project of restoration. And I think it was helpful for the residents to see that information posted on the site.
And we also developed a page on the Natural Resources webpage on the town website as well with more information.
From my side of it, I thank the Ecobonic Protection Committee for assisting with this, and specifically the town's Nature Reserve Committee. The chairman and other members, Glenn Vincent, also assisted with this project. A lot of people like to go up here and have coffee and their bacon, egg, and cheeses. So what you did there is you recreated something that was more of a higher environmental quality. There is historic erosion there with a lot of asphalt in that area. So what was designed and used right now, I think, is in keeping with the character. I think the members and the residents of Springs and East Hampton are happy with it. So I thank you for taking that on, and to the other committees too.
Definitely a team effort, and we really appreciated all the help.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Melissa.
Melissa.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. Next up is the East Hampton Airport Draft Secret Scope. And Matt, do we have Dan Ruzzo on the line?
Yep, I'm putting him in right now. There's also a Peter Farrow. Is he a part of this as well?
Yes, bring him in as well. Yeah, from AKRF.
Yep, give me one sec. They're coming in right now.
There we go. Good morning, Dan and Peter. How are you?
Good morning.
Very well, thank you.
Great. Well, I'm going to turn it over to you, Dan.
Okay.
Walk us through today's draft secret scope on the airport.
All right. This is a restart of the secret process for the town's efforts to sort of take control over the airport operations. Peter, perhaps you can just bring up the.
Yep. Is it okay if I share my screen?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you. So starting with the next slide. So we are restarting the preliminary steps in the secret process in order to begin the efforts of the town's efforts again to consider flight operation controls at the East Hampton Town Airport. Once again, we will be looking at a prior permission required framework to control activities at the airport with a fleet of potential control measures to reduce noise impacts, longstanding noise impacts at the airport. These include the time-based curfew examples, the type of aircraft that might access the airport, the noise-based permissions, which would address the issues with the noisiest aircraft that have used the airport, operator-based commissions, the nature of commercial operations versus the local-based operations, and environmental-based controls regarding leaded fuel in the future. And lastly, as an additional element of this, one of the parts of the study will be the consideration of the permanent closure of the airport when it's legally permissible to do so, as an alternative to these various noise controls that have been outlined in the past, and once again being considered. Peter, the next slide. So the secret process itself, let me step back a moment. So that what we're doing is integrating the secret process into the consideration of these controls. And they're part of a study that is required because the nature of this action, the operational control by the town board, is a discretionary action. And when a discretionary action of a municipal body, state body, has potential environmental effects, they are subject to the State Environmental Quality Review Act, SECRA. And the steps that are required to be taken, there are a bunch of procedural steps, but the most important aspect of the environmental review is to take a, quote, hard look, unquote, at the potential environmental effects of this action. And there are procedural steps, prescribed steps that must be taken to ensure a thorough environmental review occurs, that another critical element of the secret process, public participation, is provided, opportunities for that, and an examination of alternatives to the actions that the town might consider. It's a way of broadening the scope of actions to avoid environmental effects. So we're in the earliest stage of that process. So the town is in the process of considering, the town board is considering this action. And we believe that the action is an unlisted action under seeker. There are three sets of actions. Type 1 actions more likely to require an EIS, type 2 actions which are exempt from the seeker review, and unlisted with sort of the vast unwashed in the middle. And this is that type of an action. We're following the steps for as if it were a type 1 action, because we are completing a full environmental assessment form, parts 1, 2, and 3, with some additional narratives. And those documents are on the town's webpage in connection with what has been considered so far. The next stage is to determine the potential effects, potential significant adverse effects that would stem from the action itself. We have identified one or more potential significant effects that are related to not the controls directly that are occurring at the airport or proposed to be considered at the airport, but rather the potential for diverted flights from this airport landing at other airports, and in effect moving noise impacts from this area in the flight paths to the East Hampton Town Airport to other local airports. Peter, I'll let you take over the next steps in our process here.
Thanks. And following on with what Dan had said, as with the prior time that the town had looked at this, we identified several potential significant adverse impacts. Increased noise at the airports to which flights may be diverted from the East Hampton Town Airport, so specifically at Montauk, the Southampton Heliport, and Gabreski. Included, right, just the changes in flight operations, the number of operations at those airports, the type, the time, the frequency. Particular patterns around the affected airports, if more and different numbers of flights go to those other airports. We identified the potential change in ground-based transportation that would accompany those change in flight patterns as a potential significant adverse impact. And then also a change in community character as a result of noise, traffic, flight operations in general, and kind of the potential for the combination of all of those to have a significant adverse impact. Also identified potential impacts in terms of air quality and greenhouse gas emissions, and potential impacts on noise-sensitive wildlife. And in the seeker world, an environmental impact statement, or EIS, is required upon a finding that there is the potential for one or more significant adverse impacts. So basically what Dan had just described is the very beginning of seeker, classifying the action, determining whether there is a potential for one or more significant adverse environmental impacts. And we believe there is that potential. And so what we're recommending is that a generic environmental impact statement is performed. And basically this generic EIS is allowed under state law and regulation to evaluate a program, excuse me, such as the PPR that has a range of alternatives. And so the very first step, I know this sounds like a lot of procedural steps, but really all of these procedural steps are to begin the process and to allow the public to now participate in that process. So all of these initial actions, adopting the EAF, parts 1, 2, and 3, the positive declaration, and publishing the draft GEIS scope, which I'll talk to in a minute, allows the process to begin. So it's just the beginning of that process. Once the town board determines that there is a potential for a significant adverse impact, it publishes what's called a scope of work, or a GEIS scope, for that environmental impact statement. And basically the GEIS scope is the table of contents for the GEIS. What actions will be considered, what environmental categories will be studied, and more or less how those environmental reviews will be conducted. And we prepared a draft scope for you to consider publishing at your meeting on Thursday. And that simply allows the process to begin. So what it does is it allows a public comment period to begin on that draft GEIS scope. And we're suggesting an approximately 45-day comment period within which there would be an in-person or virtual scoping session, or both, at a regularly scheduled town board work session. And really, this is the opportunity, the very first opportunity for the public to engage on this environmental review and provide comments on this table of contents on what impacts get studied, how they get studied. So did we look at this correctly and identify those areas that needed to be studied, and we identified the information upon which we would rely and kind of conduct those studies. Once the town board receives those public comments, it would revise the draft GEIS scope as needed and issue a final GEIS scope, and then prepare the actual document, right? So we've now got the table of contents, and we're going to prepare the actual document. The town board then reviews drafts of that GEIS for completeness. And basically what that is the town board saying, all right, did we get it? Did we address everything that needed to be addressed as was required in the GEIS scope? And so once the town board determines that the draft GEIS is complete, it then publishes that draft GEIS, excuse me, for public comment. So the next step is a public comment period on the draft GEIS. And this is really, a larger public hearing, a written comment period. We're anticipating that this could occur in the summer of 2023. And this is where the public really weighs in on the analyses that were performed and gives their comments on that. Speaker then requires that the town board address all substantive comments that were received on that draft GEIS and prepare what's known as a final GEIS, or FGEIS. So once the town has done that and responded to all of the public comments, the substantive comments, it issues what's called a finding statement or statement of findings, which summarizes the impacts and the mitigation that for those impacts that were identified in the EIS and sets forth the town's rationale for a decision on the action. And that doesn't come most likely until a year from now. It's only after that statement of findings, which concludes the seeker process, that the town board would be able, pursuant to seeker law and regulations, to take action on the PPR, again, when it's legally permissible to do so, based on other legal proceedings.
Peter, let me just jump in for a quick second. So just to reemphasize a couple of sort of key step elements here. The upcoming comment period on the draft scope, which will be issued if the board is at its decision, I guess at its town board meeting on the 15th. If the DGIS scope is sufficient, then that'll be published and public comments can begin to be received by the board. This will take us through pretty much the month of January. It's important for the public to look at the GIS scope carefully. If there's something fundamental that is missing, please share your thoughts with the town board in the comments that are written, and that'll be considered again in coming up with a final scope. One of the goals of scoping is to eliminate unnecessary evaluations so that the focus stays on what's important, but that's a determination that the board will make after we've received the comments. And then again, once the draft GIS is complete and it has all of the studies called for, that will have another public comment period. And we ask the members of the public to take that GIS studies seriously. Provide us with your thoughts. If you have consultants or other folks that various folks retain about the nature of the impacts or the scale of the impacts or other suggestions on how they might be mitigated, that's all important, and it's very valuable for the board to hear from you. Peter, let you keep going.
Thanks, Dan. So I just wanted to run through very briefly what is in the draft DGEIS scoping outline that is on the town board's website for consideration at your meeting on Thursday. So very first, right, it's, what's going to be in this EIS? Well, it's going to begin with estimating the changes in flight patterns, the number of flights, types of aircraft, times of day, frequency, with the implementation of a PPR. So what changes could occur if a PPR were implemented at these 4 airports: the East Hampton Town Airport, Montauk Airport, Kabreski, and the Southampton Heliport. From there, what we're looking at is, with that information, what impacts would there be on the following categories: land use and community character, specifically as it's going to relate to the changes in the number of flights, noise, ground-based traffic, aircraft noise specifically. We'll be modeling changes in noise based on the changes in operations, looking not just at kind of yearly impacts, which is kind of the FAA standard, but looking at kind of more peak period impacts as well. We'll be looking at traffic and transportation, specifically as there is a potential for some travelers to shift their mode of travel from aircraft to private vehicle, changes in traffic patterns in and around the airports and the roadways accessing those airports, as well as what potential that change in ground-based traffic could have on noise generated by traffic. We'll also be looking at energy, air quality, climate change, looking at emissions changes, including greenhouse gases, from both changes in the flight operations as well as ground-based traffic patterns. And then really one of the keys to seeker, especially in a generic environmental impact statement, and a program similar to one that's proposed by the town, is the study of alternatives. So required by seeker is the no action alternative. What if the town board did not take any action at all and continued? And then we've identified two other alternatives that we think are important to study. One is the closure of the airport. What if East Hampton Town Airport were closed? What would the environmental impacts be of that closure? And so we would look at the same environmental categories that we looked at for the PPR, and we'd kind of study the closure of the airport. And then we also want to look at kind of alternative restrictions. What if the PPR were shifted a little bit one way or the other on those parameters that the town has identified? And so really what we're trying to do with this study of alternatives is kind of bound the potential environmental impacts of a range of policy alternatives so that the town is in the best position to have the most information available about those impacts and be able to make a policy decision after consideration of those impacts. So I will turn it back over to Dan for
all right. Thank you, Peter. So the next step from the town board's perspective is the actions, and there's a draft resolution that has been developed for your meeting on Thursday that would have you procedurally complying with these initial steps. So adopting parts 1, 2, and 3, and there's a supplemental narrative in the EAF, which is, I think all this is posted on the EAFs are posted on the town's website. Then adopting a positive declaration, which is a statement that a DGIS will be prepared. And then to adopt a draft GEIS scoping outline for public comment. And that would be, notices would go out with respect to that, and we would begin the collection of public comments on the draft scope. As Peter indicated, our recommendation is to schedule a public scoping session at your work session for January 17th, so that if people orally want to provide their comments, they have that opportunity. But written comments would be accepted between from next Thursday through January 27th, 2023, rather.
And just, if I could jump in real quick, just to clarify, and I did not put it on here, apologies, but it is in the draft scope and would be in the resolution, but written comments would be accepted basically in snail mail to the town clerk. And there's a dedicated email address that will start working upon the publication of the draft scoping outline, the adoption by the board. There's a dedicated email address for the public to provide comments. And so those are the two ways in which the public can provide written comments, either to the town clerk in writing, hard copy, or this dedicated email address that will be up and running Thursday afternoon if the town board adopts the scoping outline.
So that's the sort of formal presentation. If the board has any particular questions, happy to entertain them.
Questions from the board at this time?
I'm just going back to Peter, your last couple of comments about how the public can actually make comments on there. We will get that onto the we'll get the EAFs onto the town's website. Is there a specific page that we should be putting that under airport presentations? And then also, do we have that email address already confirmed yet that the viewing public might have?
Yes, I do have the email address confirmed. It is EH, as in East Hampton, airport scope at ehamptonny.gov. So that's EH airport scope at ehamptonny.gov. and that will go live Thursday afternoon once the town, if the town board adopts that draft scoping outline.
Great, thank you. Any other questions for Peter or Dan?
I don't.
So just to reiterate for public purposes, on Thursday, we will be having a resolution to vote on adopting this draft scope. At that point, that will kick off the comment period, which we'll have subsequent scoping sessions on the 17th, and the written comments will be taken through the 27th, I believe, of January. And at that point, the town board will work towards issuing a final scope in the February or March timeframe. Prepare the draft GEIS. The environmental studies will be set forth in the draft scope in the spring of 23. Town board will review and accept the draft GEIS in summer of 23. Public comments will be taken on that draft GEIS public hearing, public comment period. That's also expected to be summer of 2023, with the preparation of a final GIS in the fall and finding statements fall winter 23.
And just to repeat to the viewing public, the draft copies of the scoping document are on the town's website under work session presentations, which is on the homepage. We'll put it under the airport headline also on there, and the EAFs for your review then too.
Great. If there's not anything else, we'll move on to our next agenda item.
All right. Thank you. Thank you all again.
Thank you, Dan and Peter.
Okay.
Appreciate your work on this.
Thank you.
Next agenda item is the Montauk wastewater system update. And we have with us the Director of Natural Resources, Kim Shaw, as well as Senior Analyst Melissa Winslow, and our outside consultant, Nick Bono from H2M. Welcome and good morning.
Good morning. So we're here today to talk about the feasibility study for Montauk.
So we wanted to start with talking about why we're all here. So it is well documented that nutrients, particularly nitrogen and phosphorus, and bacteria are of concern to water quality in Suffolk County. And a major source of that is substandard and failing septic systems. We in Suffolk County, I believe, have over 360,000 cesspools and septic systems currently, and we're working towards upgrading those. But the issue is really exacerbated in densely populated tributary areas to priority water bodies, where large sources or high flow septic systems impact water quality. Conventional systems aren't designed to treat wastewater. They receive wastewater to collect solids and leach liquids into the surrounding soil to control pathogens and bacteria, but do not remove nutrients. The effluent from a conventional septic system can be upwards of 60 milligrams per liter of total nitrogen. All sanitary systems within a groundwater contributing area have the potential to impact water quality by contributing nutrients. The town, county, and state all have incentive programs to upgrade these conventional systems to innovative alternative on-site systems to improve water quality regionally. But in densely populated areas, property size, high flow rates, high groundwater can make siting IAs difficult, and options are limited. So centralized wastewater treatment is the solution currently proposed for downtown Montauk, the dock area, Long Island Railroad, Industrial Road area, and ditch plains.
What this slide clearly shows, is the center photo is of a cesspool. It's just a concrete ring with holes in it, and really does nothing to treat any of the wastewater. Most of Montauk was built before Suffolk County had regulations regarding the current sanitary system, which is a leaching tank and then a drain field. So most of Montauk is on cesspools, as is the majority of East Hampton town. And these systems have to be pumped frequently at a high cost to all property owners. So how do we get here? The town is, and the county and the state has been doing studies for years on wastewater. When I got here in 2012, we started, I worked on the Lake Montauk watershed plan. The conclusion from that, downtown Montauk needed a collection system. Then we worked on the comprehensive wastewater management plan. That got followed up by the water quality improvement plan, or CPF. And then we did a strategic plan for the downtown Montauk area. And now we're here developing a map and plan. So we've done all the preliminary studies. We've identified the areas that are in need of upgrades. And in Montauk, we've prioritized 4 areas that Melissa already went over. That's about it. So this is a feasibility study as to whether or not a collection system is warranted in downtown. Sorry.
Innovative alternative septic systems are permitted by Suffolk County Department of Health for advanced on-site treatment. They're required to denitrify to meet a standard of 19 milligrams per liter of total nitrogen. Town of East Hampton has a septic incentive program, and we've incentivized over 450 IAs in the town of East Hampton thus far. So these installs can be successful in other areas, but there's several reasons why IAs are not the solution in downtown Montauk. The biggest limitation is lot size. The treatment area is really insufficient for some of these high-use facilities in downtown Montauk. There's simply just not enough space. Underground utilities are an additional obstacle, leading to, limitations on the lot size. In addition to the insufficient horizontal area, there's also insufficient vertical distance to separate the leaching structures from groundwater. So the diagram on the left of this slide shows the septic separation or septic system with separation from groundwater. It's functioning, although it might not be removing any nutrients from the wastewater. And then on the right, there's a failed septic system. So it's literally sitting in groundwater and there's no treatment. It's contributing nutrients and bacteria directly into the groundwater. So with sea level rise and rising groundwater, the septic issue is amplified, further reducing the groundwater separation and increasing the risk of failure, as shown in the diagram. With centralized wastewater treatment, offsite wastewater can be handled properly with advanced treatment. And if needs arise in another area, the plant can be expanded to accommodate that, or hookups can be decommissioned, and that capacity can be used elsewhere where the needs arise.
So the benefits of sewage treatment. Why treat wastewater? Well, maybe let's say fisheries, wildlife habitat, recreation and quality of life, and public health concerns. With respect to water quality, there's been numerous studies documenting impacts of failing septic systems to surface waters and groundwater. If you remember, a few years ago, we had an event in Montauk, an athletic event canceled because Fort Pond had extremely high algal bloom numbers. We read about it all the time, about Georgia Pond and others, Lake Montauk. It's been documented that a lot of those algal blooms have been directly linked to failing sanitary systems. Public health and safety. Right now, existing homes are not tested, so we don't know the impacts. There used to be a very rigorous program by Suffolk County Department of Health, especially in Montauk, to test private wells to see if there was contamination from any source. What they're mostly finding is that private wells throughout the town are usually contaminated by the proximity of the wastewater treatment system on site or the cesspools. So we had this in the Springs Fireplace Corridor. It was documented that areas that weren't not served by public water had serious problems because of the proximity of their setback from their cesspool. Economic. I went into a little bit that these systems are pumped frequently in downtown. We've had some documentation that property owners have spent over $100,000 in a season to pump numerous times a week, often pumping groundwater, along with it.
I just wanted to add on one other benefit of centralized wastewater treatment is that as the technology improves implementing upgrades is much easier and more cost effective at a sewage treatment plant rather than going to, you know, each individual on-site system.
I think we're going to hand it over to Nick and get into the engineering component of it.
So Nick Bono from H2M, our engineer working on this project.
Thank you, Melissa and Kim. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me today. So as Kim and Melissa were just talking about, they were going through background, numerous studies the town has conducted. H2M kind of came on board following several of those studies. What we were tasked with was looking at areas that were already flagged for centralized collection and treatment, namely the docks area, the railroad track area, ditch plains, as well as downtown Montauk. So what we had done going through our evaluation was prioritize these areas based on flow density. Flow density is essentially what it sounds like. It's the sanitary flow per area within a set boundary. As we had done that, evidently the downtown Montauk area had the highest density and was prioritized as the #1 target to focus on centralized treatment and collection. When we prioritized the area, we thought of it as a phase 1 of a multi-phase project. And that's typically how these systems go in place. You're not just building something and siting something to focus on a targeted area. You're building something as a first step in targeting a much larger area potentially, because you do know you have different issues present relative to sanitary wastewater in the community. So essentially when we talk about phasing a project, the first step is doing feasibility or doing preliminary engineering with the ultimate objective to create a map plan and report, which is a legal document required to establish a special district within a town. That being said, as far as a timeline of what the overall project could look like, initially it starts with land acquisitions, concurrent with doing your map plan and report for the formation of a district. But there's also a critical step in SECRA and SHPO. Similar to the presentation previously, the SECRA part of this process is in the very beginning stages. We're really just focused on getting a proof of concept in that we're looking at the right area to target for collection, and we've selected the site for treatment that really makes the only sense within the area.
Nick, can you just help me out? SHPO for the viewing public.
Is a State Historic Preservation Office. So there's certain sensitivity to archaeological sensitive properties or historical properties. So if the action requires excavation or improvements that are going to be directly within or adjacent to a property that's designated as historic, you have to go through a process to determine what the impacts are and what the mitigative measures are, similar with SECRA.
Thank you.
You know, this is it's a significant action. So there's a litany of things that are going to have to be evaluated further to determine that the impacts ultimately are not going to be a net negative for the community. In addition, there's a laundry list of items here, and really the purpose of this slide is to give a sense of timeline on how long projects of this nature typically take. And I mean, you can see here from start to finish, 8 years, and there's a lot of assumptions that go into that. The one main assumption being focused on consistent forward progress, timely reviews and approvals from different regulatory agencies, as well as the town itself. So as I was indicating, we did evaluate and prioritize the 4 areas that were identified to us. And by going through it, we did existing conditions build out analysis, which is really applying standard wastewater design flow criteria for existing uses within each one of the 4 areas. The table at the bottom of this slide, if you can see, summarizes what those build outs were relative to acreage, parcel count, flow, and ultimately flow density. And the importance of this slide is Suffolk County has various groundwater management zones throughout the county. and they vary between density limitation of 600 gallons a day per acre or 300 gallons a day per acre, which is the equivalent of 2 single-family residential homes within 1 acre. So half-acre zoning versus 300 gallons a day per acre, which is, 1 home per acre. So just for frame of reference, if you kind of look broad stroke across communities, there aren't many communities within the county that actually meet the density as is, because a lot of development here is predated, the regulations that were put in place. But when we do look at the 4 areas we evaluated relative to the groundwater management zone in Montauk Hamlet, which is based on 600 gallons a day per acre, you can see top down, downtown Montauk was the highest density out of the 4 that were evaluated at about 3.5 plus times the density that's currently restricted based on groundwater management zone.
So Nick, that's basically more than 3.5 times what Suffolk County would allow if
there was new development to occur. That was, what they would allow based on new development without any advanced treatment.
So it's
provided.
deficient by 3.5 times now.
Correct.
The total on that was 173,000 gallons plus of untreated sewage daily.
Correct. Yeah, the existing build out projection was just over 173,000 gallons a day for downtown Montauk. For the railroad area was just under 48,000. The dock area was approximately 98,000 gallons a day, and Ditch Plains was approximately 96,000 gallons a day. As you go down the list, you can see how the flow densities relative to the groundwater management zone limit decrease in intensity. The only takeaway with this is I know these areas were flagged as priority areas and areas of concern, but as you start getting closer and closer to the flow density limit, depending on site conditions, that's when you start questioning, is centralized treatment the cost-effective solution versus doing something innovative on site.
Right. And when like Ditch Plains, for instance, you reach almost 1.1 density flow. So you're almost within the parameters of Suffolk County.
And it's primarily residential, right, which, the IA systems with the incentive programs in place may be a cost-effective solution for that area relative to.
One problem with that area is the high groundwater. It's such high groundwater that siting systems is difficult there.
Yeah,
and that's why it rises above what the flow rate is in terms of.
Yeah, and that's why it needs to really be evaluated case by case to see how appropriate it is. These projects, when you talk about centralized treatment and infrastructure, there's cost associated with piping and mechanical equipment, and you have to look at the aerial extents you're looking to serve too, because it does increase significantly. So wastewater treatment facility siting concerns and feasibility, that was a big part of this. The priority areas and what we were looking to sewer, I think have already been identified extensively by others. There were preliminary locations flagged for potential treatment sites. The existing treatment plant serving the Montauk Manor was something that was looked into to see if there could be some type of agreement between the town and that entity for the town to assume ownership and potentially expand it. Area limitations really kind of put that option to bed. It didn't seem realistic nor reasonable to pursue that further. The town of East Hampton landfill site, this is specifically the landfill site as it exists today. It seems like that could be an option. However, when you start looking at the history of the site and that landfill was capped, what appeared to be available vacant area on the property is area that's used to handle the stormwater runoff from the capped landfill. So that really eliminated from the landfill site as it stands today as being a feasible alternative as well. The state right-of-way near Westlake, Montauk Highway, Montauk Downs Golf Course, and the Montauk Railroad Station area. All of those site geometry, but more importantly, proximity to surface water and shallow groundwater conditions rendered those sites not appropriate for siting a facility like we're talking about. And you can see I have a list of the limitations on there, but the main limitations, like I said, on most sites throughout Montauk that have or appear to have the area needed to site a sewage treatment plant, all are located in flood-prone areas with shallow groundwater, which are big issues when it comes to siting sewage treatment facilities where you need to reintroduce water back to the ground. So as I had mentioned, this is an overview map that kind of gives a better depiction of the priority areas, the docks, ditch plains, the railroad, and downtown Montauk. But it also highlights other areas that were looked at for potential treatment sites. You know, after we looked at the list that was on the prior slide, we did expand the search. I did work closely with Melissa at the town, and they had gone through extensively flagging properties that were a minimum of 14 acres. And the reason why we're targeting that area is because we're not just looking at downtown Montauk. We're looking at providing a property large enough so the infrastructure can be expanded in the future to accommodate whatever the town's needs are. And that doesn't necessarily mean ditch plains, the docks, the railroad station. It could mean something else that becomes priority in the future, or something that is a problem and something that the town has an interest in correcting, an environmental issue. So we were targeting a site that would be large enough to accommodate all 4 of those areas, plus a certain factor above that. So you would have flexibility as opposed to being stuck with a postage stamp site for a treatment plant that can only serve one area. And say 10 years after this is established, there's issues that need to be addressed and you don't have land area to accommodate it. So it was important from a long-term planning perspective to kind of come up with that area extent, and we did. But as we looked across the hamlet itself, you can see a lot of the areas were either already preserved or groundwater inundated, wetland inundated type areas that really wouldn't be physically possible to construct a facility on. So what we had done, and again, in the initial stages, the landfill site did seem promising, aside from the fact that it had no available space to construct a treatment plant. After doing the analysis I just talked about, where we really didn't find any other suitable land area of the size needed to site a facility, we did kind of look back at the landfill and looked at the surrounding areas. What you can see on here is just to the east side of the landfill is an area that we designated to appear to be suitable to site a treatment plant. We did do some preliminary assessments on existing conditions. I know I am going to hand it back over to Melissa and Kim to talk about land swap considerations. But again, this is proof of concept. It seems that there's available land area up there. There's adequate separation of groundwater. And based on evaluation of prior modeling efforts and studies done by Suffolk County, the groundwater direction of flow with the location that we're flagging adjacent to the landfill is migrating north, away from the residents to the south, away from the Suffolk County Water Authority well field. And again, that was a preliminary assessment that would have to be evaluated further during the SEQRA process. Again, just as I alluded to, the groundwater travel time direction, this is information that has been obtained from Suffolk County that they had gotten when they did their extensive subwatershed analysis, which again is a study that they put together to prioritize areas that they wanted to target for centralized treatment, as well as where they're going to prioritize the installation or incentivization of installing IA systems. So you can see the blue line across the screen is the superimposed divide line, and north of the line, the groundwater potential is to migrate north, and south of the line, the groundwater potential is to migrate south. So I think with that, I am going to turn it back over to Kim and Melissa. They are going to talk a little further about the land swap implications associated with the property that was flagged adjacent to the landfill.
So we didn't have time to include this particular slide in the presentation, but this is a clear topography showing the groundwater divide and the direction of groundwater flow. It's a really great map. We just got the information late last night, but we thought I'd share it with you guys.
Okay.
Just in case it wasn't clear.
If you could just characterize what that map shows for people who might not be able to see it.
So the map shows the groundwater contour lines.
Yep.
So looking at the lines, the closer the lines are together, the more quickly that the groundwater will flow. But you can basically see that there's a peak down the middle and that groundwater will flow perpendicular to the
From
lines.
this site, it flows northerly towards
Yes.
Fort Pond Bay.
So I think that's important to add to the
Yeah.
slides when you can and put them up on the town
Yeah, we
website.
can do an update. We just didn't. So the piece we're looking at now is the 18-acre piece that the town recently purchased. Originally, this was going to be a CPF acquisition. But then looking at the other pieces that we had potentially to cobble together for a swap for the county, this one just rose to the top as being ideal. The others were much smaller, 2.5-acre pieces scattered throughout the town. Some had houses on them that were going to be torn down, so they weren't pristine in that respect. And we wanted to make sure that the swap that we're offering to the county was, a solid match where this is 60% wetlands, just about. We believe there was a historic structure on this that burned. I believe it was a former hunting lodge or something. We're doing a little bit more research on that, but there's really just like a rock wall and a couple, like a rock fence on that property right now. So this was purchased with municipal funds, and we believe it's like an ideal piece for a county swap. So what's required for a land swap? Broad public support. We have to make sure our New York State Assemblyman and Senator are on board to help us move this forward. We are going to be presenting to Suffolk County Park trustees this week to see if they're going to be supportive of this effort. And the town of East Hampton, depending on how the park trustees handle this, would also have to do an authorization to a resolution to authorize this land exchange. Suffolk County Executive is going to be involved, as well as Suffolk County Ledge. So it's not something that's done, just here in this room today. It's going to be broadly covered by all different entities, including the county and the state. So it's not something that's done without broad public input. So to date, we have gotten Montauk Citizens Advisory in the Chamber, and the Village Association has also signed on in support of this project. We've also presented this numerous times to the Montauk Wastewater Committee, and we have their support moving forward as well, I believe.
We just wanted to summarize some of the important impacts of centralized treatment site for Montauk. And primarily the focus is for improved treatment of wastewater. So sewage treatment facility is held to a higher standard that effluent is required to meet than any on-site system is capable of. The wastewater treatment facility is able to remove more contaminants and produce better quality effluent than an on-site treatment system. Effluent and odor are both highly regulated by New York State and Suffolk County and required to meet EPA regulation. So for example, the effluent standard in Suffolk County for total nitrogen at a sewage treatment plant is less than 10 milligrams per liter, whereas the requirement for an IA treatment system, which is the best we have right now for on-site treatment, is 10 milligrams per liter, or 19, less than 19 milligrams per liter. So in comparison of these two standards to the New York State drinking water standard, which is less than 10 milligrams per liter, we're really, getting a better treatment for improving groundwater with an STP. So a sewage treatment plant will help protect ground and surface water quality by removing failed and substandard septic systems from low-lying and flood-prone areas. Another Concern is a common misconception that a sewage treatment plant will increase development. And town zoning laws and planning really govern what can be developed and where. So the installation of the STP will not increase development beyond what current zoning allows. Wastewater treatment facility may allow property owners to use full use of their properties under current zoning. So this could be in the form of affordable apartments above commercial businesses where they would be currently allowed under zoning, but are limited based on the capacity of their existing sanitary systems.
And I just want to add on that when we first started this, we looked towards West Hampton. They were in the process, West Hampton Village was going to be looking at sewage treatment. We invited the mayor and the deputy mayor to the wastewater committee, and they gave a presentation on, the ups and downs of doing a wastewater treatment facility. They were originally considering building their own facility. The county then stepped in and they were able to take advantage of hooking up to the one at the airport there. So that process, which H2M also oversaw, was, over 7 years connecting to an existing facility. We asked the mayor, if you had to do this all over again and the existing treatment plant wasn't there, would you find land and would you develop your own sewage treatment plant? She said, without a doubt, yes, no matter what the cost. So in West Hampton Village, they don't have anything scary. There's nothing greater than 2 stories. The mayor said that some of the stores did go from dry use to a wet, but the piping and everything necessary for connection to the district was, she said, seamless. It was the second grant that they added on top of that to beautify downtown, to bury the power lines, to mitigate some of the stormwater problems and having to improve the sidewalks. Really did disturb the area, but she said installation of the sewers, not so much, minor inconveniences for a short period of time. And I also wanted to say that the mayor got about 90% of the hookups paid for by grants, which is impressive. And she said if she had to do it again and build her own sewage treatment, she was confident that she'd get that same level of funding.
So the town will be pursuing, funding sources in the form of grants and loans to finance this. The budget for the project will be estimated with the final map and plan for the sewer district, and costs will be finalized in the engineering, design, and bidding phases. So the town will actively pursue grants to fund up to 90% of the costs. Some of the available grants are from Environmental Facilities Corporation. We're currently on the multi-year list for the current project cost projection in excess of 72 million. Some other grant sources that we will pursue may include the Clean Water State Revolving Fund, Water Infrastructure Improvement Act, or WIA, and DEC grants. Community Preservation Fund, Water Quality Improvement may be used for matching grant funds for the town. And then properties within the sewer service area will contribute to the O&M costs of the facility once it's operational. So as we move forward, we will continue to engage with the public and communicate openly and get feedback. The town has been working with the Downtown Montauk Wastewater Committee, who's very active in the process. They're made up of Montauk residents, not-for-profit representatives, and business owners that have been advising the town throughout the whole process. The Montauk CAC will be getting regular updates, and we've done one presentation to them so far. Public outreach to residents and business owners will be very important as we move forward to educate on the need for wastewater improvements and how the town is addressing this problem. And there'll be future town board meetings for development of the map and plan, as well as future phases of the project as we move forward.
We've also started posting on the town's website FAQs about what this wastewater district is, and we're going to document all the steps that we take moving forward. So we'll have this presentation up. We'll have other information available to the public.
So the today's presentation and the FAQs are posted on the website under town projects and the website again is ehamptonny.gov, and go to town projects and you'll find the information there. And as we get more information, we'll post it on that same page. Thank you very much.
Can I just ask a question? The last bullet was formal education and outreach plan to be determined. How are you going to design that? What's the plan to come up with how we're going to do the outreach?
I think we haven't quite gotten to that step yet. I think that'll be coming, as we develop the map and plan and finalize that, we'll be working on developing that plan for the best way to engage.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really,
Yeah.
determined by how the progress of the plan goes forward and the various steps that need to be.
The committee is all over that. They're ready to go. They've helped us develop the FAQs. They've got a bunch of stuff ready to populate the website with. But yeah, we're working closely with the committee. There's a lot of really strong and hardworking.
There's going to be a lot of like one-on-one, discussions.
Yeah.
Really, I think the folks in Montauk will be talking this up, and we've already seen a great deal of talk surrounding just
Correct.
the initial question of this topic, and so we'll be filling in information for people so they can understand what's going on, and there'll be plenty of opportunities for members of the Montauk community to comment directly and to ask questions and raise concerns that we will be looking at and seeking to address.
The sewage treatment plants used to be a scary thing to talk about, but now with all these new studies that are about, we see West Hampton Village just hooked their small village up, and they have plans to hook the rest of the village up. So not only the business district, East Hampton Village is considering wastewater treatment. They have several different options on the table too. They're moving their treatment facility around. So we're not the only ones doing this. We finally, like I said, in the comp plan, I think in 2005, there was a recommendation for some type of wastewater collection. And West Hampton Beach told us they were 30 years in the making to get their system on board. We're maybe 17 years out, but whatever, we're taking the right steps and making sure it's fully vetted public process.
And I know one of the major concerns that gets raised anytime there's any discussion about a sewer district or waste treatment plant like this is that it will spur development.
Correct.
And I think people have to realize that zoning really controls development within our town, not septic flowage rates. And so while if zoning allows you to build more, then you still have to meet the septic rates, but it doesn't go the other way. If the capacity is there, but zoning doesn't allow the expansion, then it doesn't allow the expansion, plain and simple. And right now our code, limits future development. One of the, I think, aspects that a downtown waste treatment would actually provide for is the expansion of the ability to build affordable apartments above existing buildings, which is allowed under the code, but for that issue of being already maxed out on septic flowage. So that, I think, is the one area where you could see some improvement of affordable housing being available as a result long-term of a sewage treatment plant that currently you couldn't do.
Can you share who's on the wastewater management committee?
Sure. I don't have the list right in front of me. Let me see if I can remember. We have environmental groups. We had Laura Tuman, who called in earlier from CCOM, is on the committee. She's the president of CCOM. We have various individuals, Steve Baumgartner, Steve Kalimnios, who's a business owner downtown, Leo Daunt, who's the president of the Montauk Chamber. Help me out here.
Andy Harris.
Top Light, Andy Harris.
Lou Cortesi's on there also.
Lou Cortesi's, as you know, is on the town planning board.
And Part of the Ditch Plains Association.
Right. So it's a very diverse group of individuals, and I think pretty representative of the Montauk.
Brian Harris also.
Brian Harris is the president of the Montauk Beach Property Owners Association. He's on the committee. So it's pretty broad spectrum and pretty representative, I think, for the most part of the community in Montauk. Any other questions?
Yeah, no, I don't have a question, but I just want to make a couple of comments, and that is that when we will look at the SECRA for this project, what I think people should really think about is what no action means for the future of Montauk and the future of groundwater and drinking water in Montauk. These are not unlimited supplies. These are impacted. And I think it would be a huge error to not mitigate what's happening there now. I also, when you really, and I asked the folks in Montauk, and everyone's concerned as they should be, and be educated about this project, that they take a hard look at that timeline and see how much input the community will have and how much input is needed. So I really thank you for the timeline slide that really puts things into perspective for me. So thank you for that.
And I think as materials get created to, do outreach and educate the community, I know when Nick went through, I'm looking for page numbers, I don't see page numbers, the flow projections for existing build out for phase 1 downtown Montauk, obviously this is the proper way to do it. It's very technical. Is there a way to talk about it in more, human terms? Do you know what I mean? Where it doesn't sound as sciencey, where it's more practical and it's easy to digest.
We could probably, I can work with Kim, put a summary together to break it down by restaurant seats, square footage of retail. I can kind of break it down for those types of uses, but essentially those are the criteria that you have to go off of when you're trying to calculate a design flow. So I can look to summarize that in a way that's more tangible. So when you hear the number, you can associate it with, oh, okay, that makes sense. That's where it's coming from.
Right. And when we're talking to, folks as we're out and about our day, it's in more plain language, I guess.
Yeah, and in plain language, I just want to also have everyone keep in mind, we're using all these very polite words in polite society like effluent and nutrients, but I just want everybody to put the picture in their mind of exactly what we're talking about in plain language as well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's raw sewage, basically. I don't want to get more plain than that, but I think it's important to know that this is really a kickoff in a way to this project publicly, and inviting the public to become aware of it and become educated about the issues that are driving this effort, which is part of a town's more than a decade-long effort now in order to improve our surface waters and groundwaters and protect water, which is our most valuable resource here in East Hampton. And this will entail a lot of discussion and a lot of back and forth and comment. We welcome that. And as we move forward, there will be many more opportunities for updates and further discussion about the project. So I think Natural Resources Department and H2M and the committee who've been working on this to get it to a stage where we could really have this kickoff meeting and this project along.
I do think there's still a lot of information that needs to be out there and conversation that needs to be had. And I understand what the supervisor was saying about, our zoning is our zoning, but zoning can change. And so we have to be sure that we don't have something, my personal point of view, that we don't have a system out there that can and zoning can be used as the bludgeon to make development happen. So I think that's for me, that's the big elephant in the room. And I think for many in Montauk, that's what they're also looking at. So I think we need to be very careful with how we approach and how we inform, me included, everyone that's in the community.
Any other comments or questions from board members? We'll move on then to liaison reports. Thank you all.
So I apologize, I'm a little under the weather today. So I'd like to start from where we left off last week when we had the presentation on the Route 114 Community Housing Project. There were a couple of outstanding issues that we left off on in that presentation, and I wanted to confirm with the board, because we're looking to go out for RFP in January. The mix of units, the working group had recommended 16 one-bedroom units, 18 two-bedroom, and 16 three-bedroom, the rationale being, so there's different folks in our community that are in different, transitions in their life, whether they're single, whether they're married, whether they've got, a couple of kids, or they've got, a family with their, parents living with them. So I just wanted to see before we, finish drafting the document that town board was comfortable with that.
I was comfortable with that mix.
Yes.
Yeah, it went, in my liaison report, I'll talk about the Wainscott CAC and their view.
Okay, sounds good. The other thing I wanted to touch on, we had a caller talk about the current tenants, and I know Katie got up and spoke about how we would manage that. So first I want to start with the Smith House. That's the 4-bedroom house that the town owned. One of the considerations was going to be, could we turn that into a public space? I know, Peter, you had made some comments about that. And last Wednesday, Drew Bennett went out. We had hired him to go out and do a conditions assessment of the different buildings. We haven't gotten his official report yet, but we have gotten, Tom Rule, Francis Bach, and Linda Norris were on site when he was doing the assessment. So the working group is going to now recommend that it remain as a 4-bedroom rental unit. The house is in good shape and meets the needs of a family with, 3 children there. And given that it would be cost prohibitive to, recreate it or repurpose it for a recreation room, we're recommending that we keep the house as an affordable home for, our large family. And then as far as the cottages are concerned, the East Hampton Housing Authority can work with the tenants and find them housing in their other properties, whether that's for the long term or for short term. We also talked that there may be an option that those folks could stay on the property through the construction. Really depends on what the final site plan is and how it lays out. So it would be, there's not enough information to make that decision at this time, but we want to assure the residents that we've got their back, and we'll be looking in on that. And probably would keep the front cottage as the caretaker's cottage, and then eventually the smaller units would come down. I don't think there's one thought was they could be used for storage, but I think when we get Drew's report, that's not going to make sense. So that's where we're at on the Route 114 project. We also discussed last week the special events. Changes to the code there. We've got David McMaster working on those that we had discussed, and Kate is working on getting the numbers together for what the board had requested as far as days of the week that people are having, catered events on the beaches and frequency and whatnot. So that's coming, and we're hoping that David will be back on the 20th, next Tuesday, because we really want to keep this moving along so that we can get the code changes in place prior to the start of the next season. Switching gears to the YMCA, I went to the Board of Managers meeting last week, and we are, if you recall, this past year, we went out for bid for a roof replacement and to fill in the skylights, and also to do an HVAC replacement for the gym area and the classroom and whatnot. And we had a budget of, I think it was 1.2 million, and it came in at 2.3 million.
Yeah.
So we went back to look to see if there was ways to, do some valued engineering, and Matt Jedlick has come back, and there really isn't much we can do as far as what the specs that we went out to bid with. But we are breaking it into 2 separate projects. We'd like to go out to bid in January, but obviously we've got 1.21 budgeted, and Matt is anticipating that the latest projection is 2.53. So I've got to hopefully sit down with Becky this week and figure out how we're going to make that work. We also, when at the meeting, we were discussing the doors in the pool area. We just replaced the front door and the doors upstairs in one of the exercise areas. But these are the original doors. They're over 20 years old. So now the pool doors need to be replaced. And we had an issue this week with the snow leak through one of the skylights or multiple skylights in the aquatics area. So Matt Jedlicka had been out there last Friday with Statewide, who we have on contract, to look at sealing them from the outside until we can get the roof replaced. But now we're having some issues with the trim around at least one of the skylights fell off into the, onto the area where, the lifeguards sit. And so we had Tony and Barry Bennett out there this morning meeting with Molly Tuzzle, the executive director, to see an even more temporary fix for that. So, these projects, it's, they're warranted, and we need to get them on the schedule as quickly as we can. The Disability Advisory Board met a couple of weeks ago. We talked about the new senior center. We talked about, they cheered the new ADA parking spot at Amber Waves, and we're grateful to Steve Lynch and his team for acting on that so quickly. We also discussed the annual South Fork Mental Health or Behavioral Health Initiative, meeting with Fred Thiel and Anthony Palumbo. We just got word that it's scheduled for tomorrow. Typically, Fred and Anthony pull a meeting together of all the school districts and the not-for-profits, the hospital, and we talk about, the progress of the initiative and what more we need to do. Fred likes to have those meetings early in December so that when he gets into budget time, he can budget accordingly. So that meeting is happening tomorrow. That we've looking for a full-time tax receiver. We had gotten 10 resumes. We interviewed, I believe, 7 people. And on Thursday, we will have a resolution appointing Christine Schnell. And Christine can start the 27th of December. The East Hampton CAC met, and we talked about the Springs Fireplace Road Corridor Study as that's being reviewed internally by the planning department, as well as Kate and myself. We've got the town attorney's office working on legislation prohibiting bamboo. I'm hoping David's going to have that completed this week. And lastly, we celebrated a very honorable man on his 80th birthday. It was Brian Carabine's birthday. So we had cake and mulled cider, and it was really lovely. Nice. And quite a surprise to Brian. And then lastly, I just wanted to touch base on the new senior center. Last month, we had the folks from R2 here. They're coming back next Tuesday to discuss the program. We need to kind of finalize this, the size of the building and how it's going to function, the budget, and then the 4 design schemes. And in a perfect world, we'll narrow it down so that they can start planning.
So are the 4 design schemes, that's the choice that we have? Or is there going to be more discussion about developing maybe an alternative?
Well, those are the 4 that they've come up with, and, they can be borrowed and married, and, they'll take us through the presentation. I believe both Carol Ross Barney and Renette Riley those are the 2 lead architects, and they'll be on the call in an effort to get more feedback on the 4 design schemes. Diane, Jeremy, and myself met with seniors, met with staff, and, I've been doing outreach to folks to try to get, input on what people, are looking for in a new center, what they're drawn to as far as those designs were concerned. And then Chris Tasuno, who is on our new senior center building committee, and an architect himself, just texted me yesterday, and apparently the Board of Directors and the Strategic Council of the American Institute of Architects are honoring Carol Ross Barney with the 2023 Gold Medal. And apparently that's very prestigious. The Gold Medal honors an individual whose significant body of work has had a lasting influence on the theory and practice of architecture. Carol is being recognized for her pursuit of architecture that betters the daily life of all who interact with it through nearly 5 decades of work. So it's really a pleasure to work with such professionals and the team that they've put together. And I think I'm hoping we have a very interactive work session on Tuesday. And that's what I have for today.
Thank you, Kathy.
Yes, thank you. And happy birthday to Sarge, Master Gunnery Sergeant E9, Brian Carabine, also known as my godfather. The first time David Leese's face and name graced the paper of the record for the town of East Hampton was in 1982, when I sat on Santa's lap at the old VFW. It was followed up a few years later as I was a Cub Scout, and my Cub Scout den visited the East Hampton Star for an office tour. Later, my face and my name were out there for athletic accomplishments at Pontic Tech. My face was also in the East Hampton Middle School yearbook and name also for 4 years, and also 4 volumes of the East Hampton High School Tideline. If you're from here, you don't have to ask what that is. Later, my face and my name graced covers of the Penn State Daily Collegian and other front cover papers of Pennsylvania papers, such as the Scranton and Harrisburg Times, to name a few, as I was battling and eventually conquered cancer and advocating for childhood cancer research. Post-university, my name and face were run in local papers because I advocated for beach access rights and also other historical preservation efforts. More recently, in most recent years as a public servant, my name and my face have been in local papers because I've taken action to assist in my hometown. To learn who I am, just call David Leese, or look for me and look at my whole entire body of work. And you and I can meet, and you and I can see me in 3D and not in black and white, but in color. This is my liaison report. Governor Kathy Hochul today announced that yesterday that the New York State Board for Historical Preservation has recommended adding 11 properties to the State and National Historical Register of Historical Places. These nominations include certain locations in upstate New York, but only 2 on Long Island, and both of them grace our great town of East Hampton. Both of them were for historical cemeteries. These nominations, quote, the governor, showcase East Hampton's diverse history through preserving important places where Long Islanders have lived, worked, and built communities. By adding these sites to our historical registers, we are recognizing the critical role that they play in telling our state's story. I hope these landmarks will inspire, educate, and entertain future generations and help connect New Yorkers to our past. I want to thank my fellow East Hampton Town board members for supporting the grant application that we won last year for a nomination of a multiple listing form for all of the historical cemeteries of the town of East Hampton, and also specifically for supporting me in years past and past board members even for the restoration of the Vanscoy burial ground. Both these efforts have landed another cherished entity of the town of East Hampton on the state and hopefully the National Historical Register. This is not the first time that I've written a successful application to the National Historical Register. That's part of my body of work. So again, thank you very much. Press release to come. Listen. I have many other things on this. Sorry, it's going to take a little bit of time here. Number 2, 395 Panago, which is the affordable housing project that we're moving on with 16 ADUs. We had a meeting with some of the internal working group. We have our map and plans almost back in place. We look forward to be in the planning department at the planning board meetings in January to move forward on that. Then also to get to the Suffolk County Department of Health Services for their comments, and also the Planning Commission then too. So this project will probably see a shovel in the ground. We'll bring it back in discussion for February. We'll probably see a shovel in the ground, and that we're hoping to run 2 RFPs concurrently for house designers and also potentially for installation of the roads. We're looking April, May of this coming year, 2023. So that's moving forward. I'll continue to update the board and we'll have another work session meeting on that very shortly. Let's see here. Number 2, I had to name them all. Number 3. I want to give an update. The Montauk CAC met. We met actually last week, last Monday. We had many discussions there for downtown Montauk, particularly some locations in an area of Elmwood and also Edgemere for locations for potential stop signs for public safety. We're still going to keep debating those next month, and I'll bring them back to the board if there's any discussion to move forward with that. We also looked at the IGA, which is called South Elder Street, which is one way, about redesigning that location for better safety for the residents that use it then too. So we'll continue to discuss that and bring that back. We did discuss the airport and the comments that would be upcoming, as we just mentioned today here through our draft environmental impact statement. We also did had a discussion about meeting parameters, about membership quorum, and virtual meetings, which we'll continue to move and discuss as a committee in January. They also want to let everyone know that there is a fire district vote for the Montauk Fire District that is actually happening today, and that is from the hours of 2 to 9. The Fisheries Advisory Committee met. We had long discussions on supporting fisheries gear storage needs in Montauk, upcoming, which the town board has helped support recently. There was a discussion about continued support of the fisheries through potential memorializing resolution language that might be upcoming year to make sure that the town of East Hampton and the town board supports the fisheries and the needed struggles and stressors that they are on, and making sure that it maintains itself as a viable industry and a strong viable industry in the town of East Hampton. The committee is also continuing to work on a fisheries shoreside infrastructure waterfront analysis. We look forward to bringing that to the town board potentially in March and April. We got delayed on that because of COVID, but that just puts locations for shoreside infrastructure into a type of a report format that we can bring back to the town board. The Water Quality Technical Advisory Committee met. We had Joyce Novak and Sarah Martin from the Conic Estuary Partnership. They described a lot of information that they've been working on as the town board funds some of their work recently. We also had members from the Cornell Cooperative Extension there. They gave us updates on PRB injections, Tanbar Creek, and other areas, even where they're looking and they're doing studies as far as groundwater seepage monitoring, specifically in Hants Creek and Sunset Cove. We did have a discussion on this about Hog Creek a while back, but they're doing other ones that aren't necessarily funded by the town then too. The Nature Preserve Committee met this past week. I want to thank longtime chairman, the last couple of years, Rick Whalen. Rick Whalen is stepping down from the chairman to, he's writing a book, among other things he's doing. I want to thank Rick for all his great work on there. Specifically, most recently, we're looking at changes to Chapter 182, which is the Nature Preserve section. Zach Cohen, bless his heart, when he was still alive, he came in and talked to the town board pre-COVID. We're trying to move on that and get that complete in this upcoming year then too, as the legislation for that is a little bit antiquated to where we are currently right now. So we'll bring that back a little further. Let me see here. I want to give everyone updates right now. And updates specifically are the ball fields, Stephen Hand Path ball fields are progressing right now. I was there very early this morning. They have done the majority of their site development. They are on schedule still. It looks like they're ready. They're moving all the dirt out of the area, and everything is progressing pretty well there right now. Stephen Hand's Path, as it was written up this week, as far as the drainage project on 114, please be aware there are going to be traffic detours down there as they bring the piping in there right now. I want to let everyone know that we received word that the New York State DOT letting date for the intersection improvements, which will be the widening of that intersection, which is under state provision to do so, will the letting of that should go out actually November of 2023 with construction in March of 2024. So set your calendar, everyone. All right. Westlake bathroom in Montauk. The Westlake bathroom in Montauk now is currently closed. I know I mentioned this to the town board. We will be installing a new ADA energy efficient bathroom in that location. It will be coming in. This is part of the capital project plan for actually 2020. in about April and May. So that is now closed. There is temporary bathrooms there, and that bathroom will be installed by that time. So I want to thank the board for that support, and also our internal staff for assistance. The town board supported pickleball courts in Montauk, and the pickleball courts, we have the final engineering for them. Those will be located where the current 2 courts are in downtown Montauk. We will be ready to go out to bid for them in January, we hope, and we look forward to potentially having them ready for the summer season of 2023. As we know, pickleball is it'd be the first pickleball courts that are dedicated courts in the town of East Hampton. There's a large user group for them out in Montauk, and maybe we can do that at other locations as we keep going. An update about the Second House Road roundabout. That is shifting into the final design, and then they will go into permitting. The final design, once we go to permitting, we'll come back from the DEC. If there's any changes, we'll make the changes. I'll bring any scope or engineering back to the town board for discussion, and specifically also to the Montauk CAC for discussion, but that is still moving ahead then too. Rough Riders intersection down by the train station. We are now at the point where we have final engineering permitting on that. I'm going to mention that in the past, but we are getting the pricing and scheduling for that project right now. We're looking to have that scheduled as soon as we potentially can using county contracts. We're looking at potentially March and April for that. It's going to be about 6 to 7 weeks of a project. Again, that's another project the town board has supported over the years, in which we look forward to getting that installed by the summer season. Stephen Hand's Path, that we have part of the town board's initiative to upgrade the town's facilities, specifically for IA septic systems. The Stephen Hand's Path Comfort Station upgrade is actually starting installation today. It's going to take about 10 days. That bathroom will be offline. We are talking to our community groups, but that is working there also. I moved that forward because, as Jeannie mentioned, and stole a little bit of my gusto here, we will be releasing RFPs for IA septic upgrades at Maidstone Park. And we will also accept a bid for installation of the Montauk Lions Field septic upgrade system. Yes. So we're moving through our priority list that we have. And it started with the Ambiganza Comfort Station, and we're starting to matriculate through the list right now with our priority ones. I thank the board for moving those all forward. I want to let everyone know I am David Leese, and this is my liaison report, and just a very small snapshot of who I am and how I approach my job and how I love my family and how I love my job. I like my board members. I love my board members. I'll go with that. And I look forward to the future role that I have as your East Hampton Town Council person.
If I could just add a little context to that, David, because not everybody may pick up on it.
That's okay.
And I just feel like I have to say something. You know, this past week, we saw a full page ad with David Leese's picture in it with an arrow drawn. This is David Leese saying that he and his town board bullies are doing all these terrible things. And now these ads have been running full page probably since May. They're funded by aviation interests who are suing us in court and would like us to stop defending those suits, which we have been doing. And, you know, they perpetrate a lie that we're using taxpayer funds to defend this litigation. The fact of the matter is we're using the airport fund, which is solely based on revenue from the very people who are suing us. So they're paying for both sides of this litigation. And at this point, I think they would like us to roll over. We're not going to roll over. And the more they come at us and say terrible things about us, trying to disparage our character, people who are known in the community for decades, contributing, being charitable, being part of the fabric of this community, the more they've shown that they've really lost this argument. This is all they have left. And I expect, you know, we're coming up on an election season. I think we're going to see a lot more of this, but they're so misguided. All they have on their side is money. They have no soul, frankly, if they're going after people, father of 4 beautiful little girls, and attacking them in this way. This is not what East Hampton community is about. They don't know us. They don't live here. They're not about us, and they're all about themselves. And so I just want to say that, put it out there. And I'll keep saying it because as long as it goes on, it should be called out for what it is. Thank you. You have a liaison report.
I do want to say to David, in particular for his body of work, thank you for everything that you've done here.
Thank you.
I am so proud to serve with all of you on this town board. And, you know, I'm sure we're going to, Thursday's coming.
Right.
So I'm sure we'll get another full page ad and we look forward to it at this point because we know you don't represent.
Maybe we could send them, you know,
A better
approved
picture?
headshots.
Do you want better pictures? Yeah, let's get better headshots over there. I think that's right.
They're having a really hard time finding a bad looking headshot.
All right. But David, thank you for bringing that up. Peter, for your defense, and for your honesty and truth. So my liaison report starts out with a business committee that we met last Wednesday. We always have Robert Ross from Southampton Hospital on the call and gives us the latest updates of what's going on with our area hospitals concerning COVID. Southampton Hospital, as of last Wednesday, has 11 COVID patients. A month ago, they had 7. So just so to get a comparison, they've got 1 in ICU and they did record a COVID death last week. Stony Brook Hospital has 92. A month ago, they had 52. So we can see again, the trend is escalating. They have 19 patients in ICU and 8 of those are on ventilators. Eastern Long Island has 2 patients and they vacillate between 1 and 2 patients. The positivity rate ranged last week at Parish Hall Testing Center from 7.8% to 25%. But again, those numbers are so skewed by home testing that, you know, although they can give us these numbers, it's probably not exactly what we're experiencing now.
And if you're having a procedure at Southampton Hospital, you have to get tested. So that's, you know, in the mix too. So people that are, you know, healthy are getting tested just so that.
Correct. We've had a request from the business community to look at the noise code and to consider possible improvements for both code enforcement and restaurant music venues. They're going to be working with and reaching out actually to Kevin Cooper so that they can have him report back to us, to the business committee and to the town board. Jeremy Samuelson gave an overview of the affordable accessory apartments that we saw, the changes that we were considering. So he gave another overview to that committee. And we delegated it to Rick Whalen, who is going to take a hard look at all of the changes that we are considering and looking at our code and how it might affect the code and what other parts of the code might also be affected. I think that brings in the other GFA that we were talking about during that. So Rick Whalen, thank you so much for doing, you know, a yeoman's task for us again on the business committee. The Community Housing Opportunity Fund also met. We're in a little bit of a flux for, you know, considering what this group needs to morph into now that the referendum has passed for the 0.5% transfer tax. They suggested staying intact as a housing advisory committee if the town board feels that they also need that as another committee. So, you know, I think we need to do that before the organizational committee comes up and make a decision on that. They had comments on the 114 presentation. They've become aware that there was a meeting with Kathy, Jeremy, David Egan, who is the head of the school board in Waynescott, and Billy Baminsky, another member of the school board in Waynescott. They feel that the data collected and modeled that we're working with right now has approximately 35 children between 0 and 18 years of age at the complex if it's configured the way Kathy has talked about the configuration. David Egan was clear about wanting to keep the Waynescott school as is. The Waynescott school does have options and some were mentioned at that meeting. So I think that they need to move forward and look at some of those options in order to keep the Waynescott school in its current configuration of number of buildings. Earlier, we also talked about the affordable accessory apartments at Chaff, and they had also sent in comments that, you know, guardrails need to be on the legislation. Currently, as stated, there is potential for abuse, and so they want to make sure that that is handled in some way, and perhaps the town needs to spend money on more staff. Summer rentals versus employees for local businesses must be made clear, and again, that should be monitored well. And again, impacts on neighbors have to be considered, and they're concerned about language on parking, number of parking that would be at those, which we didn't really get into at the last meeting that we had. The Waynescott CAC met. And so I gave a report about the airport with the lawsuits and the updates, and also made them aware of today's agenda that we were having with Dan Ruzzo and the SECRA moving forward. We talked about the gun club, gave an update on the closure of the gun club and court dates that were upcoming for that project. We talked about the 114 project, update on the presentation last week. Everyone thought it was very thorough. They understand that the Waynescott School might engage their own expert on Route 114 effects on their own school district, and so that's appropriate. Also gave a report on South Fort Wayne construction updates for the next 2 weeks. The chair, Carolyn Logan Gluck, gave a PowerPoint presentation based on a Waynescott member, community member, who had discussions with the airport manager. The PowerPoint stressed increasing the number of routes from what was used last summer for this next summer. They felt that pilot bad behavior could not be punished and should be reduced. They'd like to see a reduced number of landing areas, especially at the executive terminal. Plus, there were other recommendations to the town board, and you'll be getting a letter from the CAC on some of those recommendations. Then came the comments from the community. And although I won't say specifically what members said, I will say these are direct quotes. If you want compromise, don't sue. And they feel that the airport is now under siege. Those are my words. And from lawsuits from those that want to compromise, and that is not the way to go about compromise. The blades of the world will continue to sue, so close the airport. Too many different agendas to ever satisfy. They won't stop suing the airport, so please close it. There were several other comments as well, and I can share names with the town board members, but in the meantime, they want to stay anonymous. A new subcommittee was formed, safety issues, speeding cars, walking and biking, and this subcommittee is going to be looking at those kinds of issues. The stop signs, thank you, David, for helping push that through. They have been very helpful, and they appreciate the new stop signs that have gone up. There was a conversation about speed bumps. Evidently, Sagaponack has put some in, as well as Bridgehampton. I did have a conversation with Steve Lynch, who said, we don't do speed bumps, partly because they're illegal and that they shouldn't be out there. So we're not going to be doing speed bumps. ARB also had a report. There are 4 homes going up next to ag reserves that the ARB is able to comment on. These are very, very large homes. Then they feel they're out of character with the neighborhood. They hope the town will look at reducing the size of homes. One of the comments was carbon responsibility needs to be considered at the town board level, and hope that there can be new legislation enacted in the upcoming year. They have a litter action committee. They wanted to thank Kate Rogers for her organizing the group. They've already had successful litter pickups, including Springs and Waynescott, and with other community support, and they appreciated that. They discussed no littering signs going up, more no littering signs going up. They do have a poster that they were asking delis and restaurants in Waynescott to put in their windows so that they could, and they seem very receptive to doing that, so that they could remind folks to dispose of any takeout food that they have, any containers that they have, they dispose of them responsibly. Bathgate Road came up as a problem where there's a lot of litter going on, and I did talk to Steve Lynch about putting up a sign for no littering there, which there doesn't seem to be one. So we are going to add a sign on Bathgate Road to remind folks not to litter. The gun club came up. It was a very, very long discussion. And partly because it was not unanimous in some of the decisions that were being made. They will send a letter to the town board about recommendations for that's going to vary everything from permanent closure to other possible remedies to consider. And again, they will state in it that it is not a unanimous decision. The Arts Council also met, and they are going to consider and have been asked to join Hampton Art Network, which is a network of art groups and associations that are all across the South Fork. Their creative networking night, which they've been doing pre-COVID, they're now going to do again in January at the East Hampton Library from 5 to 7, although I don't have the exact date that they're going to do it. They're vacillating between 2 different dates. I'll give you that on Tuesday. But this one promises to be a little bit different. They usually do 5 to 6 artists, and they will present their work. Instead of 2-dimensional artists, they got included in the group performing artists and writers, as well as 2-dimensional groups. So it promises to be a fun evening as you understand how these artists work and how they get their inspiration, and refreshments will also be served. Brooks Park, there will be a resolution hiring Michael Devonshire to do the site assessment at Brooks Park on Thursday. I can report that Brooks Park Art and Nature Center, that group is now formed. As you know, they were moving toward getting their 501c3, which they have now received. So we're happy for that as they move forward to be the group that is going to run that, that space, that site. They've opened a bank account and they've deposited $4,500 from the donations from the LVIS luncheon that was given in the first part of November. And they are now in the process of registering the 501c3 with the state. So that's moving forward, all in positive form. So, and that is my report.
Great. Thank you, Sylvia. Kate.
Yes, well, first I have to also mention what a pleasure it is working with everyone on this board and being the last one elected or the newly elected, even though it's been a year now. You don't really know how hard folks work until you spend every day with them, and I just am inspired by all of you and the work that you do, even you, David. And I just want to say one thing about
Energizer Bunny. Per barrel and be here.
Yeah, as he laps me 100 times. I just want to say I think what the most egregious thing is, and I laugh at any of these ads because they're so ridiculous. And I think of the money that people spend on these firms that write up these things, and what a waste of money that all is. Although I am happy they at least support one local business and a newspaper here. At least something positive is happening about it. But I think whatever they say about David, it obviously doesn't need me or anyone else to defend David. But I think what it says mostly, and what is most egregious to me, is what it says about them and who they think our community members are. And they have the audacity to think that the people who live in East Hampton have no idea of who they're electing, have no idea of the jobs that they do, and are so I need a so uninformed and quite frankly stupid as to believe any of this nonsense could possibly be true and to be swayed by it. So I'm more angry about what they're saying about our community as a whole than what they could possibly say about any of us. All right. So I'll begin my liaison report with the status report for South Fork Wind. And the good news is that, and particularly for Carolyn and the members of Wainscott, who I also want to point out have put up with the most impacts from the construction, that they are on schedule. The offshore beach lane work, they're intend to start to conduct the conduit pull from offshore to onshore on Wainscott Northwest Road. Now the cable will be pulled between the manholes. At the Long Island corridor, the same will be happening. And at the new construction station off Cove Hollow Road, they'll continue to work below and above grade construction, and with hope that the control house will be delivered on site ASAP. It's been a little bit delayed in the supply chain issue, but it is on track for this week, hopefully. The Waterfront Advisory Committee hosted the creators of the Georgetown Climate Resources Network, and it was an extremely informative and important introduction to, for us and for me, to the funding that's coming down from municipalities for climate resiliency and managed retreat, both on the state and federal level. It also opened up opportunities to connect with other municipalities along the coastlines to gather and share information on their coastal assessment and resiliency plans. I want to really give a big thank you to Ramesh, Rameshwar Das, who's the chair, and in particular, Michael Northrup, who's a member. We really do have many well-informed people in this town, and I took we filmed it, so I'm happy to share that with my colleagues. There's so much resources out there that will help us implement our plans for a resilient future for our community that it will be a full-time job pulling them down. Again, thank you, Sylvia. The Litter Action Committee has been hosting and out there in the streets doing cleanups in person. They're taking photos of it, which they're posting on an Instagram account, which is called Don't Trash East Hampton. So please follow it and get an idea of what folks are finding out there and ways that everyone can contribute to the solution. They are going I have an outreach going on to businesses in the off season about making sure there's receptacles outside for any restaurant that offers takeout or has outdoor dining. One of the problems that they see is in these areas, if there's no receptacle, everything just ends up on the ground when people have their lunch and go back to work or whatever they're doing. They are prioritizing their goals for 2023 to kick off for a spring Don't Fling campaign, and are we'll have a lot more information about that and all of the information that they're going to educate our community on. The Energy Sustainability Committee had their November meeting, and they are also setting goals for 2023, including, but not limited to, an expansion of solar, working with the consultants for the town on the clean energy roadmap and ways to move forward on developing our clean energy, and exploring ways to educate the community on all climate impact issues and sustainability issues. Particularly right now, we're looking at food scraps and how to participate and in getting, I guess it would be called table to farm, sending the food scraps back to the farm to be composted. We participated in a meeting with civic groups from Southold and Riverhead who have created pilot programs of table to farm food scraps to compost, and the impacts, positive impacts on the landfill. Also, it was interesting to note that food scraps are a renewable energy and an economic resource, as compost can be sold. They had last week the all-electric forum, which is an important component of transition to renewable energy. They had it at LTV. It was filmed and is available to anybody that'd like to see it at LTV. It was so informative and really a good way to get an introduction to the different appliances and heating systems and cooling systems, which will save you money, as well as get rid of some more fossil fuels in our environment. And these are a big source, particularly in heating. And there's so much innovation out there for cost saving and energy saving over time. It's really worth to take a look at them. And lastly, the spring CAC did not meet in November in deference to the Thanksgiving holiday, and I'll have a report on their December meeting. And that's what I got.
Thank you, Kate. So I'll start with the Ag Committee, which met yesterday after bit of a hiatus. I think they hadn't really met much since COVID, really. And then we had a really, I think, positive discussion about various things that the farmers are interested in. One of them is to have some more clarity within the code in terms of how it applies to them and the approval process to be a little more streamlined. There was some further discussion about the fencing legislation and the setback issue.
That was the big one when I was on this.
And, I know we did an update.
We did?
And so they were unaware, apparently. I guess the previous liaison hadn't really made them aware that was coming. But, they were interested in exploring further the process for getting approvals for particularly like non-permanent structures like high tunnels and hoop houses. That process is still a little bit onerous in terms of, filling out the forms, what's needed and whatnot. So we're going to have further discussion about that. They're going to put together a list of various things and obstacles that they find or impediments to just their operations and to see if there's a way that we can address some of their concerns and still, keep the balance of uses within our township. That agriculture is, I guess, by nature, a commercial activity.
Yeah.
However, it's really very different in many ways than other commercial activities, and the code has agricultural uses split into both the commercial side of the code and the residential side of the code.
Yes.
And so we had a discussion about maybe it's appropriate to at least look at the possibility of having agriculture addressed directly in its own section of code. So there'll be further discussion about that. They're going to put together a working group, and then at our next meeting, we'll discuss that and see where we stand. Yesterday morning, I had the distinct pleasure to go to the ribbon cutting and handing over the keys dedication ceremony at the latest Habitat for Humanity house on Thomas Avenue. Longtime local resident is able to stay here as a single father and a veteran. And it was really a very moving ceremony and really terrific to see so many people came together and volunteered on that build. I know board members were there for the kickoff and the raising of the first walls, and supervisor drove a couple nails in the first plates in his George Washington outfit as it was Halloween. I was thinking about putting a little graffiti in the basement. George Washington nailed here, hammered here, whatever. But that was really fantastic. It was a 6-week turnaround from start to finish to build what was really quite a beautiful house. And we got a tour and a walk through. High efficiency heating system and well insulated, and just thanks to the community for stepping up and coming out and volunteering to help Habitat put this together. Again, this is a perfect story of who we are in East Hampton, and who affordable housing really is meant to help. And this is a local person who works in a local business, and I spoke to number of business people in the last couple of weeks about their struggles and the importance of trying to secure more affordable housing. So that was a win, and we're in the plus column for another affordable unit. It would we'll look forward to partnering again with Habitat for Humanity. This piece of property was donated for this project by the town of East Hampton. We look forward to doing that again soon. So great story there. COVID and flu tests are still available Wednesdays and Fridays from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. at 110 Stephen Hans Path. And there are still free test kits that we have in the atrium here at Town Hall for COVID. And the current ones that we have will expire on the 10th of January, so they're still good. So if you're looking for testing around the holidays, which I think is important as there is a resurgence.
Yeah.
If you have some sniffles or whatever, you want to try and make sure that you're not going to be spreading COVID.
I tested with the free kit yesterday.
Good to know.
Negative.
Good to know. We're all feeling a little
I have
more
a head
comfortable.
cold.
We're all feeling a little bit more better.
I had
about
your
it.
head cold a couple weeks ago. I got it. Same thing. It was negative.
I also had the pleasure of meeting Santa and his reindeer. Apparently, the real Santa was out in Montauk, having arrived with reindeer. That was great. On the green, they had the chamber sponsored community event, Christmas tree lighting, and it was really a lot of fun. It was a remarkable number of young families there with their children, and as you might guess, there's really only two reactions by small children to Santa. They're either really excited or get me away from this scary man. And so that was fun to see the expression of both of that. And I think it was really deemed as a success by all. And I think that's going to become an annual.
It was their first
tradition.
time.
It was
They
the first
met in
one.
Montauk.
Magic in
And,
Montauk, exactly. And I think they're, I've heard it was very successful. Lots of Facebook page photos were on my Facebook page anyway. So it's good to see that it was so well attended, and kudos to the chamber
Yeah, it really
and
was.
the businesses for supporting it.
Leo
A lot of local businesses in particular supported the reindeer and Santa.
Mhm. And they had nice little hot chocolate stands.
They had a hot chocolate
And there were
contest. Yeah.
There were some beverages for the older elves, and so
We
that
also
was-
the town asked for additional insurance. Normally, we ask on the certificate of insurance for 2 million. When we heard live reindeer, we asked for 3 million based on speaking to our insurance carriers, but.
Yeah,
you
I
know.
will say that I was really impressed by how docile the reindeer were. I spent some time with them, was able to just like pet them.
Well, apparently they bring them into children's hospitals to visit sick kids. So
They are,
they're-
I've seen them on TV, but I have to tell you, they're really cute animals when you see them in person.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind having one. Maybe I'll start a reindeer farm someday. Let's see, where are we? Georgia Pond Steering Committee. There was an update on the stormwater remediation projects at Georgia Cove and the Route 27 rest stop. Both of those projects are moving forward well with the engineering at the 30% stage. We do have a new staff member in the Natural Resources Department, Anna Sikorski. Is that how you say her name? Do you know? Sikorski, I believe. And so welcome, Anna, and she's helping with the Cove Hollow project.
Oh, good.
And also with the beach nesting birds, among other projects. The draft DEIS for the Waynescott Commercial Center will be back before the planning board on Wednesday. They'll be discussing whether or not the outstanding issues identified in the draft environmental impact study have been met, and whether the planning board can then deem the application complete or not. The second opening of Georgia Pond on November 28th is holding up well, allowing for lots of tidal flushing. The trustees have extended their moratorium on new docks, and the inventory of docks in Georgia Pond is almost complete. Other water bodies still need more work, but the new dock policy is being formulated. Dr. Chris Gobler reported that it was a very good year for water quality in Georgia Pond. Higher salinity and the use of the harvester for 2 months is helping. The water quality buoy that's been monitoring the water has been removed for the season, I guess ahead of the ice if we actually ever get that cold. And that the two spat on shell micro oyster reefs exhibited good growth. The reefs are moved to deeper water in the pond after the second opening, which exposed them and left them high and dry. A lot of people don't realize that it's the brackish waters that are actually most productive for growing oysters. Also, they were excited about the new USDA IRS ruling on the septic grants no longer being taxable. And I did mention that we will be asking town staff to research those who were issued 1099s to give them notice
Okay.
that they can file amended tax forms to recover that money.
Okay.
And there was a discussion about the positives and negatives of managing Phragmites on large scale versus individual by individual property. Attended the Surfrider Holiday Party and Membership Drive, which was at the Southampton Public House. Their emphasis this year going forward is really going to be on single-use plastics and discouraging people from utilizing them. Everything from, getting the little plastic packages of condiments and takeout stores right through the whole gamut, just to try and get people more conscious to avoid single-use plastics. And I'd encourage anyone who's interested in, the environment, and particularly ocean and water quality, to consider looking at this organization for membership. They do a great job. They sponsor a number of local beach cleanups and advocates for clean water, throughout Long Island. We have a very active Long Island chapter, but this is a national organization. They do great work. I'll just reiterate what was mentioned in today's agenda on the Montauk wastewater, that the information, today's presentation, frequently asked questions are posted on the town's website. You can go to ehamptonny.gov, look under town projects, and you'll find wastewater there. That will be the home of all future update information as well. And I guess I can also reiterate that once the East Hampton Airport scope is voted on, and if we approve that the place for comments during the scope comment period will be Airport Scope at ehamptonny.gov. Also last night, the ACAC, the Amagansett Citizens Advisory Committee met. I was unable to attend due to scheduling conflicts, but from what I understand, there was further discussion about hamlet lighting and how we move forward. My suggestion to the CAC through the chair was that it's important to get this idea out to the broader public within Amagansett Lighting District to gauge support and build support for the project before we actually just go out and hire consultants to do feasibility study based on a rather limited number of people in the CAC supporting it. I think we need to go much broader before we commit to, what would be a rather expensive process, I think. I know the board's receptive to the idea of making those improvements in Amagansett, but we're not the ones who will be footing the bill for it.
Right.
So there is an existing lighting district, and I think it's, recall correctly, maybe 1,500 property owners within the district, and I think an outreach to them. One of the major purposes of having a citizens advisory committee is to act as a conduit for information both to the town board and from the town board to the broader community. So I'm suggesting that that we have a little bit more outreach before we actually start the wheels of hiring a feasibility consultant for that project. So, and that's my report. That brings us up to resolutions. We do have a couple of resolutions. Kathy, I think you have the first.
I do. It's Resolution 2022-1445. And this is to reimburse a notary renewal fee for Carol Brennan in the amount of $60.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passing carried.
I'd like to offer resolution 2022-1446. This is appoint part-time automotive equipment operator in the Highway Department, Austin Kahn, hourly rate of $22.61, retroactive to December 5th, 2022.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Pass and carried.
1447 is accept a proposal from the Burial Ground Preservation Group. This proposal was dated November 11th, 2022, and is for the survey, conservation, treatment, and repair of 11 headstones and 10 footstones located at the Ranger Cemetery on Old Northwest Road. The financial impact is $5,000.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Pass and carried.
1448 is to accept a proposal again from the Burial Ground Preservation Group that was dated on November 11th, 2022 for the conservation and treatment and repair of 3 headstones at the Jericho Cemetery located on Jericho Road in East Hampton. The financial impact is $4,000.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Pass and carried. I'll entertain a motion to go into exec session.
Motion to go into exec to discuss leases, personnel, easements, CPF, and advice of counsel.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Pass and carried. It is now 1:30. Shall we take a half hour for lunch or so?
45 minutes.
2:15 then?
2:15?
Reconvene at 2:15.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, everyone. Stay safe.